Hey, we want to welcome everybody to another episode of You and the Law Podcast Show. Hopefully, everybody's having a great afternoon, and we thank you for tuning in and joining the podcast show. I am one of the co hosts of the show, Virgil L. Green Sr., and my co host, who goes by the name of the alias The Underground Chiefs Swag One.
You gonna get it right?
Well, you know what, man? I can't even see what you got. Oh, yeah, Swaggy One. Yeah,
Yeah, look, you
Swaggy
gonna
One.
get it right because I was getting ready. I'm just getting ready to get off, man. If you don't get it right, Virgil L. Green Sr.
Hey, man.
What's going
That's
on, listeners? Everybody in the audience, how y'all doing today?
Hey, we definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining another episode of the podcast show. We've got another another topic that hopefully everybody will tune in and talk with us this evening. It's a very important topic. We're going to be talking about the fall of 2022. What's next for students' school safety? Keith, we talked about this, and it's something that with so many school districts starting back that have started, some are getting ready to start. I think it was really important that we talk about school safety as what happened just a couple of months ago in Uvalde, Texas.
Yeah, Virgil, I just in doing some research for this show, there's almost been nearly 30 school shootings this year alone. 30 school shootings, and that doesn't even include those incidents where people have threatened to do harm to schools. As a matter of fact, just yesterday in Texas and I think a couple other states and cities, we there had a student threatened to shoot up a school. So this is becoming. We talk about an epidemic. This is becoming or has become an epidemic
Yeah,
on a daily, weekly, even if we don't say daily, at least a weekly basis, where we're talking about some sort of violence that occurs or that has been threatened to occur inside of a learning institution.
yeah, exactly. And Keith, school just started back, and there was an incident uh, in Arizona where some parents were notified about a potential active shooter at a school. Uh, they rushed to the school. Very chaotic scene, almost similar to what happened in Uvalde, Texas, uh, back in May at the end of the school year, and parents getting into confrontation with police officers, parents being tased, parents being arrested. And I think after that, throughout this podcast, I like to talk about how this Uvalde shooting has changed the way parents respond to schools because of the lack of response that so many people across the country, and especially the parents in Uvalde, Texas, saw from their local police.
Well, Virgil, what do you expect a parent to do when they get information that there is possibly some type of volatile situation or deadly situation at their child's school? First thing they're going to do is they're going to drop what they're doing and they're going to go to that scene. A lot
Correct.
of times, well, it's going to be chaotic, and it goes back to how do you stage those parents? How do you keep them calm? Who's leading that scene? It's going to be a joint effort between the schools and the police department. And in Uvalde, it was the sheriff's department, the state police, and the school police. They didn't handle that well at all. And so now at the point you're pointing fingers. But at the time that incident occurs, parents want to know their kids are okay. And it's
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to tell a parent, even though you're trying to get a situation under control, the last thing a parent wants to hear is go stand over there. And
Yeah.
so, it's until you've been in that situation, you can't say anything negative about a parent that wants to know if their children are alive. Now, can you just imagine the heavy hearts when you have other parents that are being reunited with their children, and 3 or 4 hours later, you know your child inside that school, but your child hasn't come out. No one can tell you what your child's condition is or the status of your child.
Yeah.
And you just, I mean, I can't even imagine what type of stress and heartache that causes. But we seem to forget about that, and we put more emphasis on that individual who has caused all the heartache. We always want to talk about them and their background, but at the end of the day, you have parents who have lost children, and their lives will never be the same.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Keith, and to the listeners, got a clip that I want to show, and this will bring some context into what just happened just days at the start of the school year at a school in Arizona.
Already.
77-page report details a series of failures in law enforcement's response to the Uvalde school massacre, and it describes a, quote, overall laxity.
Well, wrong video. Let me get to the right clip.
Some new video at this hour shows the confrontation between police and parents at a Valley school following a shooting threat on Friday. We told you about this threat at Thompson Ranch Elementary last week.
We also told you those parents were arrested by officers. Tonight, ABC 15 reporter Nicole Grigg takes us through the new video of those terrifying moments.
New video of the chaotic, intense moments, showing the confrontation between parents and police on Friday outside Thompson Ranch Elementary School. Panicked parents raced to the school to find their kids after there were reports of a gunman trying to get inside. That suspect found later and arrested. 3 parents also arrested in that encounter with authorities. Families telling us Friday they thought an active shooter was still on campus. Police say some family members tried to force their way past officers, one with a gun. You can see in this video that gun falling to the ground with authorities working to secure it. Then, seconds later, you can hear some of those parents being tasered as you see them lying on the ground.
Some experts say since Uvalde, we're now seeing this distrust with police and school districts when it comes to protecting our kids inside of schools.
And now they're going to question the response from their own law enforcement, and they're going to have this desire to take action themselves.
Dr. Catherine Coleman is a psychologist who specializes in mass shooting traumas. She says to prevent these situations, communication and knowing plans are key.
A lot of people's anxiety is because of the unknown. The more information we have, the better prepared we feel like we can be.
Both Dysart School District and El Mirage Police not going on camera for questions on Monday. ABC 15 is requesting the body camera footage from El Mirage Police, who say they are working on releasing the video that shows the confrontation from their officers' points of view also. In El Mirage, Nicole Grigg, ABC 15, Arizona.
A crisis response team was at the school today providing counselors to students and staff.
Keith, another disturbing video to watch where you got parents who are, their main concern is the safety of their children. And especially after what took place in Uvalde, Texas. I think this has caused something that law enforcement is really not prepared to deal with.
Well, what it's done is it's found the holes in law enforcement when it comes to responding to mass incidents, and the fact that a lot of departments really don't know what they will do. There's no planning. There is no working relationship with the schools. There's no working relationship with the local county, the state police, federal agencies. There's no working, and everybody's got their fingers crossed that this doesn't happen, and then we're going to be exposed. When you don't have a plan in place and the schools doesn't provide information to parents regarding these type of incidents, what to expect. There's a staging area. Don't go into the school. when the police hadn't trained with that school. And basically, these are our protocols in responding to an active shooter situation. When you haven't done that, those are the things you get. Now, keep in mind, you can do that and have it organized, but you're still going to, emotions are high in those situations, and you're going to have those parents that are going to react like that. But I truly believe when you have a plan in place, you minimize that type of response, because we're still going to have parents. As a parent, you really don't know how you're going to respond, how you're going to react to the situation.
Yeah.
But I think if you have a plan and the parents know that there is a plan in place, and that you have something to follow, I think it does reduce the probability of those type of actions.
Yeah, well, Keith, I think this is going to make so many school districts and so many police departments around the country where they're going to have to really start having much more communication with the parents about when these type of incidents happen, how they're able to manage these incidents to where they can really ensure parents that, that they are there for the safety of the children, and the fact that, police officers have a job to do, but at the same time, and I've got to go back to this, Keith, there was quite a few police officers in Uvalde, Texas, who had kids in that school, and you did not see the same type of aggression for them to get into the school as you did just other parents. So it leads to the question, if you are a police officer, yeah, you got a duty to do, but you definitely have to understand those concerns that the parents have, as you would have the same concern. So do you think police officers kind of disconnect themselves, even though they're parents as well?
Yeah, I think that we're trained to disconnect in certain situations so that our emotions don't get the best of us. But at the end of the day, when your family's involved in that type of situation, what do you do? When you know, especially when you know what the active shooter protocols are, one officer there, you go in, two officers, hopefully two officers, you go in and you address the threat. I think what's really bothering the community in Uvalde, other than the fact the number one deal was that you have these 19 babies and these two amazing teachers who lost their lives, and that there is a possibility that those lives may have been saved, or not as many children may have been injured or killed if the officers would have done something. We train, into the studio audience out here, active shooter training was developed so that the first officer on the scene, or at least you hope for two, will go in and immediately address the threat. Not wait for the SWAT team, not wait for other reinforcements, to go in and immediately address the threat. And so that's the question. That's what happened in Parkland. You had a SRO waiting outside while you heard gunshots. That's not what active shooter is. We train and train and train. You immediately go in, whether it's one officer, whether it's two. You immediately go in and address that threat to neutralize that threat, to save lives. That's the purpose of it. Not to sit around and point fingers and wait for the chief to give directions on how to solve this. No, that people need to be held accountable in Uvalde. Simple as that.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to get to another clip a little bit later on in the podcast where the Uvalde ISD police chief made a comment that he didn't think that he was actually in charge of the shooting. Now, so for those who don't understand how school districts work, in Texas, you've got a lot of school districts who have their own police departments. They have their own police chief, SROs that are in the schools. Then you also have your local police department who work in conjunction with those campus police.
Hopefully.
So hopefully, correct. And so for somebody who was actually in the school telling people that they could not advance toward the shooting, how do you say, I didn't think I was in charge of the school, but you're the actual police chief over the school district?
So Virg, I want to hold that thought. Incident command. The first thing is that you allow your people to do their job. You're
Correct.
there outside getting, unless you're the first person on scene. So if that police chief was the first person on scene, he had an obligation and a duty to go inside that school to try to neutralize that threat.
Yeah.
If he's not the first person on scene, then allow your guys to do their job. Don't sit there and tell them, well, we got to wait when you're hearing bullets. See, that's the thing. People want to wear the stars. They want to wear the stripes and things like that. But when they get into these type of situations, they freeze. At the end of the day, if you're saying we train for this type of thing, people sent their kids to school that day to learn. There's 2 safe havens for families that people actually believe are safe havens. Home, well, 3.
School.
Church, home, and school.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any of those entities that has not been attacked in a tragic way over the last 20 years. You can't go to church and feel safe. You can't be at home and feel safe. And now you have babies that can't even go to school to be safe because somebody's going to come in. And so, where do kids go? So then you got to get it right, man.
Yeah.
You're telling me that none of those officers there, and I don't have the report. I try not to second guess, but the problem I have with this is that we train and train and train for active shooter.
Yeah.
We know the dynamics and the requirements for active shooter, and no one immediately addressed that. Yes, those parents should be upset. The state of Texas should be upset. Everyone should be upset and disappointed. And like I tell you, man, we take 20 steps back when then we have something like this, where it appears that nobody wanted to make a decision. Now, Virgil didn't want to make a decision, or was cowardice involved in this? Because that's what you got to look at. Was it somebody? Because the deal in Parkland was cowardice. So was this a situation where nobody wanted to make a decision, or did you have people who were afraid to go in there because they were afraid to get shot?
I think it was both. I think it was both. I think when you look back at some of the video from inside the school that has been released, you can walk away with the impression that these officers, once they start hearing this rapid gunfire, they made a decision to back away. They didn't make a decision to go to the threat. They made a decision to back away. And another thing that concerns me is the fact that once this report has came out several weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, Keith, there were over 400 law enforcement agencies in this little small town of Uvalde, Texas.
Well, not agencies. Officers.
Well, not agencies, but there were over 400 different officers from many different jurisdictions that were at this scene. Now, they were not all there at the same. Eventually they were all at the same time, but the initial shooting, you didn't have 400 of them there, but you had a lot of officers who could have went in. They could have neutralized the shooter, to where some of these kids didn't have to die the way that they did.
Well, you know what, Virgil? What I'm tired of is when these situations happen, you have so many people pointing fingers at each other. And at the end of the day, stop pointing fingers at each other and determine how we're going to help these parents. How we're going to help these parents? How we're going to help these parents? Because, at the end of the day, that chief and those officers, the chief, anyways, got to explain his actions. He can't say he didn't know. He can't say how don't you know?
If you're the police chief, how do you not know that you're in charge? It's your school district.
What your people are capable of. How do you
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
How do you not say if it finds out he was one of the first ones on scene, and he did not go inside that building, and he did not execute an active shooter protocol, then something criminally needs to happen to him.
Yeah.
If officers stood there and did not go in and it doesn't matter. I don't want to hear this about we don't know if there was chemicals. We don't know. That's not what active shooter is. Active shooter is about, and we talk about this. Those discussions come up. That the bottom line is you go in if you can. If you have an open door and you have a way to get inside that building, you get inside of that building. If something else comes up where there's explosives and things like that, I get it.
Yeah.
There's no explosives there. You just basically had some people that did not know what to do. They froze. And the chief did not know how to direct that situation. And I try not to second guess an armchair quarterback. Versus just every time I think about those babies, every time I think about those teachers, every time I see some story on TV where the parents are pouring their hearts out and asking why could that breaks my heart. And this guy is as arrogant as they come. How do you? Well, I'm just gonna leave that alone. But he's as arrogant as they come. Yeah. And how do we prevent this from happening? Can we prevent these type of incidents?
Well,
I don't think we can prevent them, but I think we can minimize them because this was a situation. Hold on, Ferd, I'm sorry, but this was a situation where somebody knew that this kid had that potential, and nobody said anything.
Correct. Well, I'm gonna go back to when you said, is this preventable? Columbine happened some 20-something years ago, Keith?
23
years ago. And there's another clip, hopefully I can be able to show during the podcast, that will show how many school shootings have occurred since Columbine. Technology has improved in 23 years. Officers' training has improved within 23 years how to respond to an active shooter in a school. So I think and the question that some people will say that you cannot, say, yes, you can control it. But if you got all these things that have happened, how can you not try to control the situation when you have the resources, when you've got the technology, and the fact that we're still dealing with a generation of kids who throughout their whole entire school life, they've had to deal with this threat of potentially being a victim of an active shooter.
Are you trying to say, man, can you imagine that? Today you go to school not knowing. So there's no reason to say that these kids don't think. I'm sure you have some kids that don't think about it. But even if you say the kids don't think about it, the parents should think about it.
Parents do. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And every police chief, every sheriff, every city marshal, every federal director must think about this and determine, okay, how are we going to respond? Even if we can't prevent it, how do we reduce the probability of this happening? Might not be able to prevent it, but we sure can reduce that probability by the training and communicating and letting your community know what you've got in plan. Because you know what? We always talk about not tilting showing our hand. But people need to know, hey man, this is what we're doing. We're not going to tolerate this. One of the newest schools in the city of Little Rock, the high school, man, is amazing. The security measures that they took, is amazing. And so you start seeing all that. Yeah. And I want to say this is a controversial thing. People are going to say, well, those teachers should have been armed.
No,
I still think that that's a mistake because you in a situation, we train as law enforcement officers. We train to become proficient with our weapons. Yeah. allowing people who, whether someone goes to a gun range or not on a regular basis, what happens when that adrenaline starts flying? Are you going to be focused? Are you going to be able to maintain your composure? Are you going to pray and spray? Those are things you have to look at. And so I don't believe teachers should be carrying weapons in school. I know that that's a controversial topic. I don't believe that. Having armed, so I believe SROs, I believe trained staff, I believe school district police departments, I believe having a relationship with your local law enforcement entity. I think those things do help reduce that, knowing that you can effectively address it. But putting a gun in a classroom, and then they talk about, well, putting it in a lockbox. So
Yeah.
you got all this going on.
All this going on. Yeah.
Teachers don't remember, oh my goodness, I got to go. I mean,
Yeah, I've got to get this key, or I got to know the combination to get the gun out. Yeah.
What's going to be more important, getting that gun or getting these kids to safety? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and Keith, and I think the conversation about arming teachers in schools is that's just you can have the conversations, but how do you go from instructing students to all of a sudden now pulling out a weapon and having students get in an area where they need to be to safety, and here you are trying to make sure your students are safe, and now you've got a gun, and let's just say by something that happens, an accident happens, and this teacher shoots one of the students by accident because of just the chaos of everything going on. You have to think about all those things, Keith. I think you just can't think, okay, we give these teachers weapons and we put them in the school, that potentially will stop an active shooter, but that potentially can also create an unfortunate accident because of just the unknown happening, and you're putting a teacher in a position that they have never been put in before.
Well, Virgil, what stops the school shooting?
What stops the school shooting?
Yeah. Is there anything that can stop a school shooting?
I think there is. And I think that is making sure that you have a school campus that is almost like trying to get, can you imagine walking up to the White House trying to get into the White House? You cannot do that. So why don't we take the same type of safety measures with our schools?
And people will say, well, we don't want our kids to have to be in that environment. Well, wait a minute. There's, you can't have it both ways, and so you've got to have it in a way that you're absolutely right. Do we model it after what goes on in our governmental buildings? That type of, do we do that? Maybe that's what it. Maybe that's what it.
And let me ask you this question, Keith. Why, if that's the case, why did it take us 23 years to figure out what is the best practice to make sure students are safe?
Well, and Uvalde, we must have not figured it out because you had the resources there, and the resources didn't step forward. So have we figured it out, Virgil?
No,
have we figured it out?
No, and again, I mean, hopefully, those who are listening will chime into the chat room and share your thoughts and concerns about it, because everybody who is watching this podcast or who will listen to this podcast, you have kids or you have grandkids in school. And so, are you asking the principal of your school, what safety measures do they have in place to make sure that these things don't happen? Or
out of it.
Or
superintendent and the school boards.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? And when you do that, Keith, those superintendents and school boards are going to say, well, that's a school level issue. That's something that the principals need to deal with.
No.
So, no. And that's not right.
No, because the principal gets his money from the school board.
Yeah.
and the school board has approved that budget, and hopefully in that budget there's some security
Well,
measures. So
yeah.
you can't
Well,
put that back on the school. You can't put that back on
Yeah.
right now. Now, are there some things that principal can do on a daily basis? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but
Well-
as far as major security measures, no, man. That's
Yeah. No. Well, and another thing, Keith, what kind of relationship does the school district have with their police department? Because again, the police may come in and say, these are the things that we're going to do. And there's some pushback from the school district to say, oh no, you guys can't come in here and do that. So that's another part of this conversation. What type of relationship does that local police department have with all of the schools in their cities to say, if there is an active shooter, we're in control of it?
well, I want to say this, man. If a school doesn't have that and a police department doesn't have that relationship, I just got one word: liability.
Yeah.
Bet you understand that. Bet you understand liability.
Yeah. Hey, Keith, I want to get to one of the comments in our chat room. Miguel, a good friend of mine I've met up in Minnesota, he is listening to us on LinkedIn. Yeah, that is right, people. You can, if you're a LinkedIn follower, you can definitely follow You and the Law podcast show on LinkedIn. So Miguel says either have gun control and our police departments need to work together with the schools. He's got another comment where he says, as a parent, I would be asking our school what plans they have if they have invited the police to the school. That's a good question. Good points, Miguel, because I think it's real important that parents really engage with the principals, with the superintendents to find out and see what plan do you have in place if there is a threat of an active shooter, just like the clip that we saw in Arizona, Keith, where there was somebody was armed trying to get into the school. They wasn't able to get into the school, but it caused that much panic and chaos. And you saw what happened. Now you got parents being arrested and tased. And that's another bad image that's between police and parents now.
Well, you know what, Virgil, if you have a plan in place, then people, because I don't think people realize, or, at that point, when you find out that your kid is in danger, the last thing that you're thinking about is not calling police. You want to call 911, you want to call the schools. And I think there has to be protocols in place to where people are provided information that there's overload on the 911 system. There's overload when you have these type of situations.
Correct.
This is what we expect from parents. God forbid this happen, but in order for us to be able to provide the information that we need in a timely manner, we will have a staged area for the parents. We will have a staged area for the media. This is where law enforcement will be. We will have a perimeter, how large the perimeter needs to be. That way, whether or not parents agree with it, they know that you have a plan in place to get them as much information as quickly as possible. But when you don't have a plan and you don't relay that plan, it should be an operations plan. It should be the school and police department should have a working document, an MOU, that basically says, and we've seen that you have the school districts that don't have police departments, they have an MOU. Memorandum of understanding with that school that that police department, the local police department, is a primary jurisdiction in case a criminal act occurs on that school, so you'll know what to expect. They should be training. They should have annual training, in-service training. We don't do that still. We know it's going to happen. We have our fingers crossed that it doesn't happen, because I'm telling you right now, nobody wants to think about sending their child to school and think about their child being in danger. But unfortunately, those are the times that we're in. We have to have those conversations, and then we have to be in that type of mindset each and every day. Not the fact that we dwell on it, but the fact that we are cognizant that our kids could be in danger. Just like going to church? Do you think when we have an active shooter at a church, that those parishioners thought they were going to church that day and somebody was going to come in with a weapon? Do you think the average homeowner thinks someone's going to come? No. Same thing with the kids, but unfortunately, we have to plan and we have to be prepared and we have to realize these are the times we're in. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and we just have to realize that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Keith, we got another comment in the chat room from Kathy who says, good point.
What's up, Kathy?
You have to build. Hey, Kathy, how you doing? You have to build on those relationships, which is really important. Keith, I want to remind everybody that, you're listening and watching You and the Law podcast show. And tonight's topic is the fall of 2022. What's next for students, school safety? Another part of this conversation, Keith, as I look at this other comment, Kathy says, my guys, thank you, Kathy. Definitely think a lot about you, Kathy. So, but another part of this conversation, Keith, is today I was a part of a group of police chiefs who met with some school officials up here in Minnesota, where this whole conversation about pipeline to prison. You got some parents who feel that SROs shouldn't be in school because there's this perception of the pipeline to prison. But if you have an incident that takes place at a school, and we've had so many school shootings across the country, as a parent, and I'm going to ask Miguel and everybody else who is listening, as a parent, wouldn't you want to have a police officer, an SRO in your school that that person has built a relationship with your with your children, and that this is somebody who is going to put his life or her life on the line for those students in that school? I think Keith, I know that's a conversation that has been out there for quite some time about this pipeline to prison, but I think we need to really get away from that conversation when we talk about, school safety.
Well, I'll tell you, man, the individuals that say that defund the police and the pipeline to prisons, they don't have a clue. And I get it. You shouldn't have to have police officers in a school. I was a school resource officer. I get it. I understand that that's not the perfect situation you don't want, but it's the times. And, there's been several incidents that if school police had not been there, that would have been, it could have been tragic. If there wasn't a school resource officer or a school police officer, or if it hadn't had a relationship with the local police department, there have been so many of those incidents that were probably prevented based on the fact of that presence. So we've got to stop looking at our personal opinions, because when you ask a person what a pipeline to prison looks like, there are some experts that can tell you exactly. But I truly believe that there are those individuals that haven't a clue how law enforcement really works. They don't know what they want, and they think they know what they want. But they're saying that without taking into consideration people's safety. They're thinking in their personal opinions.
Exactly. Hey, Keith, we got another comment from Miss Pamela Humphrey in the chat room. She said, "Is active shooter training the same training across the country?"
Yeah, it is. It's all about the initial response and immediately.
Well, Keith, I'm gonna challenge you on that.
Well, no. That's the primary. That's the primary basis of it. You get there on scene. You go in. One or two, hopefully two, but at least one. The first officer on scene goes in and engage. That's what active shooter is. That's the basics of active shooter. Now, do you build on that? Yeah. But the basics of it is you go in and you immediately address the threat. That's what's taught. That's the basic concept of active shooter.
Yeah. But, again, I think, Pam asked, a question that is active shooter training the same training across the country. And you may have some jurisdictions or some they may do something different other than what the model active shooter training may be. And so there again, when you have so many different jurisdictions or so many different school districts, and you may have officers who respond, they may have been trained in active shooter training in a different way if they did not have some type of a formal training together.
I get it. And you're right. No, I don't think it's the same across. I think it's the concept is all the same, but I don't think everybody trains the same. But at the end of the day, as a law enforcement officer, you mean to tell me, as a law enforcement officer, you'll run inside of a bank, not knowing how many suspects are inside of a bank. You'll walk inside a convenience store knowing that it's in the process of being robbed.
Mm-hmm.
You walk inside a house, but you won't go inside of a school as a law enforcement officer, first one on scene. After we talked about what happened in Columbine, have we talked about Parkland, have we talked about these other schools, and you know what the concept of active shooter is, and you want to immediately address it, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't see, you know, Pam comes back and she asks, should it be the same or should it be revamped? The process is there. It's all about how much you train. You can't just say you're doing it. You got to train.
You got to train. You got to train.
You got to train on it. And that's one of the things I will say the departments that I have been a part of have taken the active shooter situations very seriously and very comfortable with knowing that the response would have been top notch if something would have occurred. I've seen a couple of things occur in cities, and they were able to be prepared to go in. So yes, it should be revamped. It should make sure everybody is doing it. We tie a lot of federal funds to other things. We should tie federal funds to police departments that don't have active shooter training or an active active shooter training should lose funds. So yeah.
Hey Keith, I want to get to another comment for play this other clip from Miguel. He says, you know, I asked this question. He said it was a loaded question. It's a loaded question for him because I don't think we should have police at schools, but since there isn't some other options, I think we need to have one in order to try to keep our kids safe. Yeah. So,
you know, go ahead, Bert.
Yeah. So let me play this clip real quick. Hold on just a second.
77-page report details a series of failures in law enforcement's response to the Uvalde school massacre, and it describes a, quote, overall lackadaisical approach by nearly 400 officers from many different agencies on the scene that day. The report blames a lack of effective incident command and a failure to follow active shooter training. The Uvalde mayor is vowing to investigate every officer's actions. He's also lashed out about how this entire investigation has been handled.
We're tired of the leaks, we're tired of the stories, and we're tired that you said no law enforcement officers are cooperating. That was their statement. The city of Uvalde and the school district police office has not cooperated since day one, and that is a lie. We have given 100% anything they have asked for.
Can feel his anger through the screen. With me now is Chief Jimmy Perdue. He leads the North Richmond Hills Police Department. He's also president of the Texas Police Chiefs Association. Good morning, Chief, and thank you. You've been clear in saying our profession failed the families in Uvalde and those children and teachers. What is the most important thing you learned reading this report?
Well, it pretty much confirmed all the things that we had feared about what had actually took place. Is the officers, despite information that was very clear to the first responders as well as others, that the additional information they got from 911 calls and just from hearing things, failed to act. They failed to move forward in the threat of danger, to secure the scene, to take care of the attacker, and to save as many kids as possible. You know, I think the report correctly stated it was a systematic failure. There were a lot of things that went wrong, a lot of things that we have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of things to justify to the community of Uvalde. Yeah. But we as a profession did not do well that day.
We just heard in Jim's interview with Ronald Garza, who's the county commissioner in Uvalde, say other agencies, other commanders could have taken action sooner. Is there any lesson in that for who should have jumped in? Because we know Pete Arredondo, who's gotten a lion's share of the attention for being in charge that day, testified to this House committee. He didn't think he was in charge.
Yeah, that is I've explained that during my testimony down at the Texas legislature, trying to explain what happens in an active scene when you have that many people together in a single environment from different agencies. And our natural tendency is to default to the local agency of who's in charge. And you saw that on the body camera. You saw people deferring to the chief because they knew he was there in the room and he was verbalizing some of his instructions. That was very clear that he was in charge. And so it's a very difficult thing for an individual officer to go past the chain of command and take independent action. Clearly, with hindsight, we know that's what should have happened. Somebody should have stepped up. And I believe that if somebody had stepped up and said, I'm going in, I believe that others would have followed them into that door.
And I wonder
if... You know, Keith, a lot of those bullet points you've addressed, and I've, said it in the podcast show. But there again, when you admit to the failures that we have in what took place in Uvalde, is a lesson for other police departments to make sure that those things don't occur.
Which comes out of tragedies a lot of times are lessons learned that help you become better. Jimmy Perdue's a good friend of mine. I know Jimmy from the Metroplex. He's a very sharp guy. And one thing about Jimmy, he's going to be honest, and he basically said law enforcement failed that city.
Yeah.
And so take those
failed the city and the parents. Yeah,
absolutely. So right immediately after that, all police chiefs should have been calling their command staff in and asking those questions. Mayors and city managers should have been calling their police chiefs in. School boards and superintendents should have been coming together. All those entities should have been coming together in every city in the nation to see what, number one, let's make sure this doesn't happen. What do we have in place? And that's what I've said. A tragedy can sometimes cause our lessons learned to help us be better. Yeah. And so this doesn't happen again. And what I mean by that, we know that unfortunately, God forbid, there's going to be another one of these incidents. God forbid it be this fatal, but we can be prepared for it.
Yeah.
So that we don't make the same mistakes and everybody's standing around like what. And Jimmy was right. I'm telling you right now, the police departments that I've been a part of, as a police chief, if I told my officers not to go in, I'm probably going to get trampled.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When they're in that situation.
You're going to lose a lot of confidence in your officers.
You're going to lose. Officers are going to quit. At the end of the day, that's what we're here for. And you know what? The chief should have had his butt through that door first.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Keith? And this is
the door first.
Yeah. And this is something that got me in the last clip that I just played. The person with the keys, that is the police chief.
Yeah.
So this is what gets me. We are way past technology to use keys. Everybody use key fobs. Why are you still, when you've got so much money, if the legislators allocate the funds to improve the technology into schools, why in the world are you walking around with keys like you the custodian?
Okay, back up.
Come on now. I mean, we're in 2022. We're not in 1963.
Okay, let's take the technology part out of it because technology costs money, but you can't put a price on lives, right? But why did you not have a master key?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Why is that not key to have a master key?
Yeah, you going through six. Yeah, he went through at least 6 or 7 keys while we were. That little clip that I showed, he went through at least 6 or 7 keys.
Dude, he looked like he had every key to every house in Uvalde on that key ring.
Yeah, exactly.
One master key.
Yeah.
That's an embarrassment, man. That is embarrassing to watch as a law enforcement professional. And I'll say this again, those there's not enough money in that city for those families, but I'm telling you that those citizens that are involved in that need to bankrupt that city and that school.
Yeah. Well,
Because that is and to sit there every time I see that, Virgil, it breaks my heart. And you got him with these keys. If nothing else, mark the damn keys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've been with this school district for
Really?
a lot of years. Why are you just now trying to figure out what?
Because it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah,
It ain't gonna happen. I look good in my uniform. I got my stars on.
Yeah,
I look good. I'm running for councilman. I look good. So that's all I need to do. I just need to be the face of the school district police department.
Yeah,
well, you know what? You are the face of the school district. Yeah, absolutely.
You just made yourself look like a fool. Yeah. Hey, I want to get to another comment that Miguel stated. He says, since 2009, the U.S. has had 288 school shootings. Mexico, 8, second place. South Africa, 6. Nigeria and Pakistan, 4. So as we can see, this is a huge internal issue that we need to address how to stop it overall. Miguel, that's something that we talked about. I mean, since Columbine, since in the last 23 years, we've had more school shootings and more students have lost their lives as a result of these school shootings than what has happened with do you compare it to some of the wars that the United States has been involved in?
No, I don't think you can.
No, I mean, but there again, Keith, just to
because Virgil, we know what war is about.
Yeah, war is about killing people. Yeah.
War's about power. It's about taking over and about Yeah. There should be no war on our children.
No.
There should be no war on our children.
This is the one thing that gets me is the fact that you have politicians, Keith, and it becomes so political. And if there's one thing politicians should have learned, and hopefully if there's some listening to our podcast show, it is way past the time for you to come in and say, our thoughts and prayers are with the family of those who have lost their kids. We're way past the time of thoughts and prayers. We're at a point to where if you're going to put the money into the school safety that's going to prevent anyone gaining access into a school. Keith, there is so much technology out there that I don't think a lot of our listeners are aware of, that a lot of school districts, and some in Texas, have some of the best technology in the world when it comes to how they are able to control the movement of students, how they're able to lock their schools down.
But you got to understand, I don't think Uvalde, and I'm not an expert on Uvalde, I don't think they may not have the tax base that some of those other schools. They may not have the tax base.
You're right.
And the tax base of the school in San Antonio or Highland Park, Texas, or certain things like that. So
let me ask you this question, Keith: if a city the size of Uvalde, which does not have a lot of schools, if they do not have the tax base, that's upon the state.
Absolutely.
That is upon the state, because as you know, a lot of our property taxes go to schools.
Absolutely.
And so if it's not that school district, it's upon these state legislators to do something within their state, or to do something to seek federal funds to ensure. If you want to take all these billions of dollars to build a wall to keep people from coming into the United States, build schools to where shooters cannot just walk into a school and start shooting people. Take the money away from building the wall and invest it into the schools.
Well, there's a lot of things, I think, Virgil, that could be, that are funded, that could probably be funneled toward school safety. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, man, that the main things right now are school safety and violent crime in the nation involving key youth. between the ages as youth as being the suspects and the victims between the ages of 16 and 30. So youth are being targeted, whether it's on the streets or whether it's in schools. And so we have an obligation as a nation to put our hands together, reach across both aisles and say, this is what we're going to do. Every school in the nation is going to look like this. Every police department in the nation is going to train like this. We got to stop talking about the feds don't need to get involved in this and the state doesn't need to get involved in this. Man, these are kids, man. Not one kid has to be brought into this world. And so we have an obligation as a parent, as a country, as adults, to ensure that that's one safe place the kids can be 8 hours a day.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing, Keith, I made this comment earlier that you've got a generation of kids who started pre-K and all the way up through their senior year. It's all been about active shooters. A lot of children have been affected because of an active shooter at their school. That's not something that they're just going to get over anytime soon.
Well, do you think the kids that were victimized at Columbine, that now that are adults that have kids in school, do you think that?
Oh man, yeah.
I mean, come on, man. I'm just saying, and just real quick, Chanel asked, when there's an active shooter such as Uvalde, if an officer is too afraid to stop the threat, who steps in? The next officer. But that officer should not be afraid to stop the threat.
Yeah.
That officer should go in. If that one doesn't go in, the next one should go in. But you sure better believe there's going to be some actions on that officer who refused to go in because they're fear for their safety. Nobody's going to say you're not scared. When you go in a situation like that, yeah, you're going to be scared. But that's what you signed up for. You signed up to protect people.
Yeah.
Nobody signed up to get killed. Absolutely, you didn't. But when that type of situation, you know that you have to go into action and utilize all the training that you've received.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Keith, man, we're coming up on the last few minutes of the podcast, and this has been another great topic. We're talking about, the fall 2022, what's next for student school safety. And again, hopefully, those parents, everybody who is listening to the show, who will listen to the show on the rebroadcast on, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, and many other podcast platforms, or even on our YouTube channel. As schools start back, I think it's upon you and us as parents to ask these questions of our police departments and of the schools. What do they have in place that will ensure that we can go through a school year, we can end 2022 without having any more mass school shootings?
Virgil, I pray that that's the case. I do. Yeah. I pray that that's the case. And I do pray that people get more involved and ask questions. Remember, we pay, you as taxpayers, you pay police, you pay the schools, you pay the personnel and all those salaries. You have a right to know and demand to know what's being done to protect your child.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, brother, man, it's been great, man. And we got another comment from Kathy. She says, great job this evening. She's learned so much from both of us. So, Kathy, we thank you. We thank Chanel. We thank Miguel. We thank everybody who didn't come on and have any comments. Thank you, Miguel. It was a great topic, and that's one of the main things that we try to do on You and the Law podcast is every week come up with a great topic to talk about.
Brother, I love you, man. Love you, brother.
Hey, man, likewise, man. The beard man is over there, brother. Hey, man. So we want to remind you, everybody, that if you follow our podcast show, share it with your family and friends. Go to our Anchor and subscribe to our podcast show. So, but until next week, brother, we'll get together again for another episode of